introductions for myself, Sean, and Jeff. So I don't know. Yeah, Sean, do you want to introduce yourself first?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Sean Boland. I'm one of the program managers at Somerset Community Foundation. I can see quite a few names that I know and quite a few faces I know, at least a few faces I know. So if I haven't met you, hello. I'll run through today just the kind of administration side of the actual grant program. So I'm leading this particular round. And yeah, we can. I'll run through in the kind of second bit the process and answer any questions you've got.
Okay, and Jeff, do you want to introduce yourself?
Afternoon, everyone. I'm Jeff Brown from the partnerships team at Somerset Council, and I'm sort of broader voluntary sector involvement, including links with Spark, and I can see Karen in the room, so that's quite useful. So helping people understand the wider support that is available to organisations that might be interested in bidding for ARF or anything else actually for the voluntary sector. So it's just that breadth of support, answering questions and possibly picking the conversation up afterwards as and how we need to.
Great stuff. Thanks, Jeff. And hi, everybody. My name's Rhys Davis. I am a service manager, part of the Adults and Health Commissioning team, and I suppose the responsible commissioning officer for the Accelerating Reform Fund. So, again, what we want to do now is just cover, and the bit that I will do is cover a bit of the background, a bit of the context, understand what is the Accelerating Reform Fund, why has it been set up, what have the government asked us to do, and what bid did we put into the government to get this money in the first place, because we need to be grounded in that. And the hope is that that will help shape maybe some of your ideas and designs for your areas. Once we've covered that bit of context, I'll pass over to Sean for the nuts and bolts of the when to apply, how to apply, what are the timings, deadlines, amounts available, all of those things. And then we'll nicely segue to Jeff for that wider support offer. So if you're looking for support with your plans or wider funds, you can be hopefully aware of what's available here in Somerset. So I'm going to start by just sharing my screen. So let's, no, wrong slide there. So context of context is that, in Somerset Council, we have a partnership approach with the voluntary sector and adults and children called Connect Somerset, around a way of working which hopefully works in partnership with communities of Somerset to help people lead good lives. And the Accelerating Reform Fund, we've talked about it and we worked it up within the Connect Somerset steering group in Somerset. But essentially, the Accelerating Reform Fund itself was a one-off government grant that I think it was a £42 million fund that they gave to local authorities and councils across England because they recognised that there were traditional approaches to commissioning did not support the development or acceleration of innovations, particularly around prevention, early help, and technology. And they said, we know there's good stuff out there, there's energies, there's ideas, and there's things that are happening on a small scale that we can't get to. So they were very broad in their aims with the Accelerating Reform Fund, but the bit that was really exciting for me is that they said, we want you to test, we want you to learn, we want you to try stuff. Okay. And they came to Somerset to say, actually, we want to accelerate anything where to increase and improves people's ability to have choice, control in their care and support. And I think I took this quote from one of their websites. Okay. So there were several, I think there were 12 accelerating reform fund priorities. Okay, so this is them on the screen here. So you can see the sorts of things that the government were looking for. Okay, there was a strong emphasis on technology, but lots of community-based care models, strong emphasis on local networks around communities and prevention, supporting well-being, massive emphasis on unpaid carers. In fact, it was made that every application needed to have a focus on unpaid carers. Okay, so you can see it's around choice and control, access to information, and how do we improve the quality and satisfaction of care or support available. So this is what the government came to us and we want to look at these four things. Come to us with your plans. And so we as a local authority, we came together, we discussed it, we moved it around a bit, and we sort of recognized that a lot of you on this call were already doing brilliant stuff in your communities, usually under the radar of traditional commissioning. Okay, so you were already out there doing it. And we wanted to invest in essentially your designs, your plans for your areas to help people live good lives in older age or live well with disabilities in Somerset. And so we wrote to the government and we put a bid in around this community-led, asset-based approach to health and care. Okay. So this is taking some of the words out of our applications here around co-production. How can care become localized models of care, in recognition that there was a growing body of evidence, and we put this into our application here that I think we quoted, got both on here, both Wincanton and Wivy, that there were lots of people, groups getting organized around the challenges of social care in their areas, and you all have different plans. Okay. And so we, as a local authority, we put this bid together, and we were successful in getting the allocation for Somerset. So we were talking about there's a range of different outputs or ways that people can deliver that. So these were just examples. People supporting shared lives, home share, micro providers, volunteers, good neighbors, car schemes, but stuff that builds care capacity, people caring for each other, information and support. Okay. Now, the priorities, you say there were 12 priorities there. The three priorities that we focused on were these. So this is something to bear in mind for when you're thinking about an application. What we've said to the government is that we want to focus in on local area networks that support prevention, promote well-being, enable people to live well in their communities. Okay. And this will be achieved through the funding of rooted place-based organizations to scale activity that builds and connects local care and capacity. Okay. These are examples. They don't have to be this. That I think the idea for you is, and I've spoken, I think we've spoken to a number of you, it has to be your plans for your areas. But if it meets this priority, then, there's a good chance it may be considered for the grant fund. Okay. So that's the first priority. The second priority is around social prescribing. So that, to connect people with information, advice. So this is the information exchange. So we were saying it's got to build capacity, connect capacity. So this is the second priority, connecting capacity. Again, around how do we connect people to stuff in a place-based area. And lastly, the third priority was priority 12 we went for, is how do we support unpaid carers? Okay, so how, in an area, can we make sure that people who are unpaid carers can get support, information, and be recognized and supported in their role, recognizing that they obviously, are hugely valuable to all of us, and we need to give them all of our support. Okay. So for me, and the purpose of this, I wanted to sort of highlight and just, I suppose, highlight the history of the fund, the key priorities, and I suppose if we were to summarize what I've just come through into some key messages in your applications, what we want to know, is it place-based? Is it community owned and run? Because that was our application. We are not necessarily, the application isn't about new stuff. It's about, does this expand, diversify, or develop existing organizations or supports? Okay. Does it scale capacity by encouraging more contributions from more people? Does it, change the conversation around social care in your area? So it's not just about service delivery, maybe not even about service delivery, but are you creating conditions in your areas for people to do more stuff, or people with ideas to, to give it a go, to try things, to help other people? Does your designs help people navigate their way through, let's be honest, a confusing health and care system? Okay. Obviously, big focus on unpaid carers there. And the last bit, which I haven't touched upon yet, that the government are clearly, obviously interested in, is what does this look like beyond the fund? We don't. I suppose we all want sustainability, so they want plans to include clear evidence that you've got a fair chance of this existing and living beyond this fund. So there's talk of community business models, there's talk about income streams, trading arms. There may be lots of ways. There might be a commitment from another funder if you get it right. There might be lots of ways that looks like, and I suppose, we'd welcome conversations around that shortly. But those, I suppose, are my key messages for today. And I'm going to stop my share now and come back as a group, because there's some bits in the chat. And I don't know. I mean, my suggestion is we go over to Sean to talk about the nuts and bolts, and then over to Jeff, and then we open it up. So if people do have questions, please jot them down, put it in the chat, and then we can have a bit of a to and fro later on. Does that sound all right? Okay, good stuff. So on to you, Sean. So about the nuts and bolts, I suppose. You're muted currently. There we are. Sorry, Sean, you're muted. There we are. That's it.
Got it. Okay. Thanks. So hopefully you can see a screen of the Community Foundation website, the Accelerator Reform Fund page. Now, I'm assuming if you're in this meeting, there's a fair chance that you've seen this web page, and that's where you got the link from. But I think it's just useful to run through it, because there's lots of information on there. Obviously, it gives the outline of the fund itself, and then there's a few little different tabs that open up here. Now, if you haven't opened them and read them, please do, because there's lots of very, very useful information in there. Talks about which groups can apply. And I'll flip over to another screen in a minute, which is actually our FAQs. And it's really important, if you've not read that page, that you read it before applying or before considering applying, because we've got a set of minimum standards that you will need to make sure that you meet before you can apply. The closing date for the fund is Monday, 4th of August. So there's around about 4 weeks, or just short of 4 weeks, if my maths is correct. And then we've got probably a 6-week period after that to allow for looking at all the bids, looking at business plans. My role will be to go through that information, to assess and to summarize and then put together panel papers, and there'll be a grants panel that will meet to discuss all of the applications to make decisions on whether to award grants, and if so, how much. If I scroll down to the bottom here where it says, how do we apply? Now, this is an important bit. So there is an application form, and you just access it down at the bottom here. It's an online form. You can log into it, just put a password in and save it. Then you can go back at any point and fill it in, so you don't have to do it all in one go. But the important thing is, with that application, you need to include some documents. I'll go on to the other documents, but the business plan you need to attach if you're applying for a full grant. And here's all the information here of what needs to be in that. So please take some time to go and have a look and make sure you've had a good read before you submit your application. If I just move over to our FAQs page. So if you haven't seen this, you'll find it just up here where it says grants and funding, FAQs. So key things that you need to be aware of is your governance model, so how you're set up. And on the left here, you'll see all the different types of groups that traditionally apply for grant funding. Ones of note are community interest companies. So if you're a CIC, this will give you a bit more information on the types of activities and the types of circumstances where we would consider applications from CICs. So one of the main ones is we expect CICs to be essentially trading, whether that's from contracts or income, and not just running exclusively on grants or donations. And we would expect those sorts of groups to be looking at charitable status. On the right hand side, we've got some general questions around things that you can apply for and things you can't apply for. Important is safeguarding, so make yourselves aware of our safeguarding requirements. There's lots of information there, and we do ask that you send us your safeguarding policy. If you need more guidance, we've got lots of links to safeguarding organizations if you need help or some advice on how to set up a policy or improve it. And then over here on the right hand side, we've got financial requirements. So we need your group to have a bank account in its own name. We expect you to have annual accounts, or if you're not a charity, if you're a small community group, we'd expect to see income and expenditure for the last 12 months. We do have policy around reserves. So we normally expect a group to have less than 12 months running costs in free reserves, unless you've got a policy that says otherwise. But if that's the case, we can have a chat with you about it. So that's the FAQs. And if I go back to the fund web page, so as you can see, the grant size is essentially, it's from full grants are from £10,000 to £50,000. Again, the closing date is the 4th of August. We will consider small development grants of £5,000 if your group is not quite ready, i.e. doesn't have a fully formed business plan. But the first round we awarded, I think it was 13 development grants of £3,000. So those groups we're hoping have got to a place where they may be ready to apply for a full grant. I think that's all on the website. So I'll stop sharing and then come back where I can actually see everybody. One thing I wanted to say is, so on the web page, if you scroll right down to the bottom, there's a picture of me and my details. And if you would like to have a chat, there's actually a booking system on that page. So you can actually just click on a link and it will open up my diary, and you'll be able to look for a slot where you can either have a telephone conversation or you can have a video Teams call. And that's normally a 30-minute call where you can just have a chat about things. One thing I could do as well, I mean, given we've got 4 weeks left, I might not be able to get to everybody, but if you're running a community hub, or and I can get out, it might be useful for me to come out and meet you if I've not already. Some of you I have, but I think sometimes from when we're assessing grant applications, it's quite good for us to actually get a feel on the ground of what you do and to meet you. I think it's gives us a much better sense of how you're working and kind of gives us information we wouldn't necessarily pick up in an application form. And also, even after the closing date for the bids has come in, there'll still be a few weeks where I'm assessing. So I might actually say to you, why don't I come out and have a chat? Because I've got a few questions. So if that'd be helpful, please let me know, and I will do my best to visit if possible. I should caveat that with, after today, I'm actually going to leave till a week on Monday, so it would have to be from that week commencing the 21st. But I've got good availability after that. And I think that's it from me, unless there are any specific questions about the process.
I don't think there are at the moment. We could maybe pick that up. Something may emerge. I mean, we had a discussion yesterday, Sean, about sort of total grant allocations and what would happen if people aren't quite ready now, but would they be available in the future? I think that was a question that we sort of has been passed to me, and I don't know what we threw that around a bit, didn't we?
Yeah, sorry, I just noticed something Becky put up actually. She asked if the application form can be downloaded to look at it first. I've actually got a copy. I mean, it's not a long application form. There are only a few questions, because the bulk of the questions or the bulk of the content of the application will be in your business plan. But I am happy to share that. It's just a Word document, and it's got sort of 5 or 6 questions on there, I think. But I can send that out to participants after this meeting if that's helpful.
Yeah, and we'll certainly send the slides as well, and the sort of background slides to the Accelerate and Reform Fund, because that's just good wider reading to know what, because we've got to report back to the government around that. So obviously, technically, we'd be encouraging applicants that came close to the spirit of the application. So that's something that we will definitely send on to you as well. Jeff.
Thanks, Reese. Before we hopefully generate some more questions, there's a question in the chat from Emma. I don't know whether you could see it, Reese.
Oh, yeah.
About potential use of a grant to employ coordinator. I have a feeling Emma might not be the only person interested in the answer to that. So could you cover that one off before I very briefly run through the support offer?
Yeah. I mean, the answer is yes. It can be used. There's no limit, I don't think, to what the fund can be used for. Obviously, the only question is trying to include a plan that funding for that role may sustain past the fund, that that doesn't involve like applying for more grants for more things, so it's trying to find sustainable approaches to do that, unless there is like, we just need this person in this role for this bit of time to get this bit done, and then that's then it's in place. So that would depend on your not knowing what your setup is. It's just but it definitely could fund roles, and and I think a lot of plans probably will.
Yeah, and I think that's clearly one of the ways that I think people will want to scale and expand, isn't it? And it is about testing that out. So, what I'm going to highlight a couple of the organisations that might be able to answer questions and support with some of the broader support. And I keep getting a flick up message saying I'm on low bandwidth, and I have no idea why. So if I dip out or freeze or whatever, I apologise. Blame TalkTalk, because the Wi-Fi is a bit iffy this afternoon by all accounts. Most of you will know this, so apologies if this feels like I'm teaching people to suck eggs, but it's always difficult to know who's going to be in the room. So this is a development, and there will be a document that follows with the slides and further information from today. So it's just making sure everyone is cited on the support that's available. Where we've got organisations that are firmly rooted in health and social care activity, they may be used to looking towards adult social care for support, and clearly working with the community foundation and across the broader voluntary sector on this, there might be new routes into that. So I just want to flag up the support offer from Spark, and it's not about getting into the detail of it this afternoon, it's just about flagging it up. So anyone that's thinking about using volunteers, anyone that thinks they may need support around policy development, or just conversation about what governance needs to look like, staff management and things like that, that broad voluntary sector infrastructure support offer, Spark is the key organisation that provides that. And without wanting to put Karen on the spot, I'm confident that Spark can answer most questions or know people that can. And clearly, in terms of the process of applying for funding, Sean's already outlined it. If you've got any questions about what that looks like, then contact Sean. Reese can talk about and get his colleagues to talk about the social care element of this, and I wouldn't want to get involved in that because that's not my bag. So I don't know what where all the regulations sit. If people are interested in knowing how close you're getting to needing CQC registration with what you're thinking about, actually drop Reese an email or give him a ring and ask the question. And we've talked about this over the last few months. So Reese is very well practiced at being able to say yay or nay to things and articulate how you can do stuff effectively, safely, professionally, with the minimum of governance and things like that, because this is, from our point of view, about enabling community-led, agile creativity and innovation. So we don't want to bog people down in bureaucracy and complexity. And beyond that, if you're interested in things like time banking, there's an offer from Time Bank UK that they're happy to have a conversation to talk about how you might include time banking into any offer, and likewise with Shared Lives. If there's anyone that thinking actually the Shared Lives model might be a fit for our community, there might be some interest in it. Actually, there is a standing offer from Shared Lives to have a conversation with you about how that might work. So none of that's to say that you need support, but it is about saying there is support out there, because we want this to create as many new creative opportunities as possible, and we don't want people to feel that they can't have a go at stuff. So think it through and ask in advance, talk it through in advance, because now's the chance, like Sean said, about 4 weeks to knock ideas into something viable and sustainable. And that's the point at which the application goes in. And I will actually stop there, and there will be some information. Like I said, there's a very brief document to outline this that will come around after today's meeting. But across the three of us now, are there any questions? Well, let's see, there's another one in the chat. Startup funding. Reese, I reckon that's probably another one from you.
Yeah, I suppose it's thinking about the stage of your enterprise, and is it something that's, the spirit of it was around sort of diversifying and developing stuff, but we will look at everything. And there is still that development opportunity where, for people who aren't quite ready, investment ready for anything significant, but we'll say actually we meet the criteria, but we're at this stage, that's where so that would be it would all be considered, and I suppose have that chat with, more we know beforehand the application comes in, the better is probably what I'd say, Sean. So having that conversation with Sean beforehand, and we can work up and understand where you are and sort of where it fits. The government haven't put too many rules around it. The rules we're putting around it, we're putting in based on our application. So if it meets the aims and the outcomes, that's going to be our priority.
And I think just to add to that, Reece, just to kind of manage expectations. So when, if we do have a meeting or I come out to see you, so I won't be necessarily judging whether you will get funding or not, or are likely to get funding up. I'll be asking the same sort of questions, around the key messages. How are you place-based and community-led? What is it you're going to expand and diversify? And then I'll be able to give you an indication of what the strengths are of what you're doing, and maybe the things that maybe you need to work on. But ultimately, everyone who puts an application in will have it considered by a panel. So it's not just about the community foundation. It's about Somerset Council and others who'll have a kind of rounded view of all applications. So by all means, put applications in, and I can certainly take you through the process and sort of highlight where strengths and weaknesses are potentially.
And I think Becky's put, is a full business plan needed? Again, that's, I suppose, from my perspective, it's, is there a need for it? Is there a demand for it? And is there evidence that it's got a fighting chance of living beyond the fund? Are the things that are in my mind. It's a bit of a how long's a piece of string in terms of business plan, but Sean, it's worth doing, because I think people are going to think, right, okay, I'm going to be doing it's how long,
I think we've said in the, sorry, Bruce, I was going to say,
it's proportionality, isn't it?
Yeah. So we've said, if you don't have a full business plan, I mean, obviously, what is a full business plan? It depends on the size of the kind of activity you're going to undertake. But if it's we're offering up to £5,000 small development grants to be able to build up those ideas. But obviously, if you're looking for more than that, we would expect those ideas to be developed to a point where you would be able to start putting together a business plan.
So Deborah's come in. Is this only a one-off pot of money? I can say this is a one-off from the government. I can say that categorically. This hasn't come through in my time. I don't know if it will come through again. It came through with the last government. There was mass delays for it to come through, and it is now finally through. So this is I think as all that we can commit to. So I wouldn't be putting eggs in baskets for other bits at the moment. But in terms of, will it be paid in full or in stages, Sean? I don't. That's one for you, I suppose.
Yes. What we've said is that the business plan should contain some, I would say, deliverables, sort of milestones and outcomes. This is not about just outcomes. This is what we'd like to do, is actually kind of go on a bit of a journey with you. So actually, this may be doing things differently and it may not work. So rather than just handing out a grant, a full grant right at the beginning, what we'd like to do is link it to some sort of deliverables that are in the business plan, so that we can actually track some progress. So it's not, I don't want you to think it's kind of, you've got to deliver this, that, and we just need to have an idea that it's progressing, and that will be individual, based on the individual applicant. But obviously, if you set out a number of things you're going to do, we would expect to see those happening as we release the funding. Does that answer your question, Deborah? I think Jackie.
Jackie's got a question about geography.
Yeah, you just missed me. So we in Canton on the border of Wiltshire and Dorset. We routinely work with well, so let's say our focus for that bit of work is around micro providers. So we have micro providers on our books who are based in Wiltshire and Dorset, and we also provide, or no, we don't provide. We also enable people outside of Somerset to access our carers list, our list of unpaid paid care workers. Advice, please.
I mean, for the majority of our funds, we work with groups who are in Somerset that deliver services in Somerset to Somerset residents. And obviously, I understand the difficulty you've got. I think we'd have to look at it on an individual case by case basis and actually understand the spread of work, I suppose, because I mean, we have funded projects that have worked across borders, but maybe partially funded based on the kind of numbers of people we were talking about. But I think it's probably not a conversation for here. It would be as part of the maybe you and I, Jackie, could have a kind of chat about it, and so I
Because I
can
think
understand a bit.
it needs to be part of a business plan if you're going to conjure up more chimney pots in rural areas.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Okay, thank you.
Something else coming now. I mean, for me, and I think we as a local authority have challenges on the border, particularly in rural areas on the border. Part of the major challenge with Somerset is rurality and care and connection and good information. And so you offering that to Somerset, the fact that it has a byproduct of also benefiting other other counties. I don't know about you, Sean, but I certainly don't have a problem with that. I think it's sort of it helps us.
Yeah, I think the fact that if an organisation is Somerset based obviously helps, because you would have the reverse issue, wouldn't you, if someone was based in Devon, delivering mostly in Devon, but also delivering a little bit in Somerset? Would we consider somebody, so it's kind of.
Yeah, I guess its main point of impact.
I think Emma's asked a question about, can Spark help with market research?
Hi, Karen here from Spark Sunset. Hi. I guess part of that sort of that conversation is a bit like wider about the need, and the evidence of that need would need to fit in with market research. That's what I'm thinking, and we could support an organisation with that. Because I'm assuming that's what you mean, Emma. Sorry, I think you're on mute.
It's part of the application. As you go down, it says to do market research and a marketing plan. And so, maybe Miranda is skilled at that already. We've had very good experience with you in the past.
Yeah. Okay. So I would say we could support you, or look at that, how we can support you.
I mean, maybe it'd be a bit less daunting to say, just giving us an understanding of how what is happening in your area, how you're going to reach people, how if you're if it involves selling something, or how are you going to do that, and how do you know it's going to work, those sorts of things. So we're not looking for a huge big document. We're just looking at understanding how you considered those things.
So sorry.
No, go for it. Go on, Martin. Yeah.
I have spoken to Spark, but because we're micro providers and self-employed, they were concerned that might cause problems with the funding. How
Martin,
does that?
oh, sorry, I'll come in when you finish, Martin. I'll come in.
I was just going to say, how does that work, and what does that mean that it's going to be more difficult for us to get funding because the micro providers are self-employed, or?
I think that's a really good question. I think our support, though, when you've reached out to us, our key colleague, Sharon, is leading on this and trying to look at a strategy across Somerset. So that's the little bit of a hold up, Martin, on following up on some of your queries. We wanted to support you as best we can, but we want to make sure we give you the right information and guidance.
Yeah, so I mean, we didn't want to get off on the wrong foot. I think it's
Yeah.
probably an outside conversation anyway. We didn't get on the right foot, but now there's a deadline in 4 weeks.
Yeah.
We're like behind the curve and stuck.
Yeah.
So I think we've got someone else to do a business plan through Adventure, which is here in Freem.
That's really, really good. I mean, it does. Micro providers were definitely mentioned, weren't they, in the funding, which is really, really positive to hear.
Yeah.
But I don't know much depth about this. That's why we're coming along today to find out a bit more about it.
Right.
But I guess either Sean or Reese could answer that a bit more about the micro providers, and possibly you were talking about a coordinator's role, which they have talked about as well.
Yeah.
And a bit of context here is quite useful as well, is that you can imagine, a sort of a non-ring fence big chunk of money coming through for prevention, early help. I wasn't the only one interested in myself and my colleagues. We had a proper old debate around where it should be spent, with every commissioner wanting their service area focused on, and we settled on, said, well, actually, if we give the money, if we all truly believe in sort of community-led, asset-based approaches to health and care, let's put it out there, let the community go to it, but we all come forward with our offers. And so obviously anybody who's spoken to me for more than 30 seconds know that micro providers would be my interest, and I would be keen to work with you all around sort of how micro providers can form part of your offers. And so I'll be doing that. But similarly, the Commissioner for Shared Lives wants to come over to you and say, actually, there might be an opportunity to have a sustainable shared lives model, tech-enabled care, saying, actually, how can we get tech in the home and prevention and falls, and so one of the things that we're kind of come to you after this also is with the infrastructure support office. So exactly what that looks like from more of the sharper end, micro providers, shared lives, tech-enabled care, right, and then more into, I suppose, Jeff's world, time banking, good neighbors, volunteering, that more universal lower level support as well. So you can potentially have your own pick and mix approach, but here's, if you want to do this approach, so I would be keen to speak with you around anything around micro providers. And I've got colleagues who'd be really keen to speak with you around other areas, but it's your designs, it's not ours.
So it was basically that I think Spark seemed a bit reluctant to help or to provide help because we weren't completely volunteer based, or not. I mean, because our interest is in the community and getting people help. That's what everybody that works is all about. Look, how can we help people? I'm getting a bit lost now, so I'm rambling and wasting people's time. Sorry. But is it to speak to you, Reese, as opposed to Spark, if we're micro provider based rather than?
I just think there's we're all, I suppose, in the same boat here as infrastructure. Spark, us, Jeff, to support your plans, and I think when it goes from care into the community, this is why Jeff and myself here, because we're in different worlds. Right. In terms of, well, I suppose I'm in adult social care. Jeff is in the community voluntary sector. So it's this is sort of, we're
bridging the gap.
Yeah, bridging the gap. So it's just, we just need to support with those conversations to make sure that they're aligned, I suppose. Yeah.
And our collective job is to navigate you through as best we can, and probably resolve some issues that we've never sufficiently wrestled with in the past. So doing anything new requires you to find new pathways, and this feels like one of them. Picking up on, moving us on a bit, I'm aware of time, picking up on Becky's comment, social prescribing is not a single coherent thing in Somerset at the moment, Becky, and it's never going to be a single coherent thing. But give it a year, and there will be a framework, which is there's a development program being led by the NHS at the moment. If you're interested in social prescribing in any given area, I would have a conversation with your primary care network, because there's NHS resource in all the primary care networks to support social prescribing, and also have a conversation with the community council, because there's social prescribing elements to what the village agents do, and both those organisations and various other bits of the system are involved in that big conversation about what a coherent social prescribing framework looks like. But we're not there yet, so we still need to pick the conversations up locally. If that doesn't resolve the question, drop me an email and I'll see if I can find somebody that can.
Okay.
I
Jackie, do
think
you want, go on.
I think multi-stranded approach, that's
Yeah.
what we're looking for, because that's where the collective support and the coherence comes from. And where we've got a multi-stranded approach led at local level, that's more likely to be coherent, sustainable, and work.
Okay.
So yeah, I think that sounds eminently sensible.
We don't see how we can. It's all intertwined. It's all enmeshed.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Within our local community. Okay, that's lovely. Thank you.
Could I ask a quick question? Would that
Sure.
be all
Yeah,
right? Just about. So some of the bids that we've been successful in the future, some of them have very extensive requirements at the end in terms of evidencing effectiveness. Kind of forgot in the beginning to kind of build that into our bid writing. Now we do, but I'm interested in what you would be requiring in terms of feedback from evidence of effectiveness, because that would need to be considered at the beginning of the bid. And I couldn't read anything about that when I looked at all your frequently asked questions.
So that would be built into your own business plan. So what we ask is that you identify what it is you're hoping to achieve, and it may be that you don't achieve it all. It may be you achieve things that you hadn't planned. And I think it was interesting. I was reading a report from the Social Care Institute, and it actually said exactly that. I think it said allowing to learn from failure as well as success and encouraging positive risk taking. So, lots of things can happen, and by default, this sort of program encourages, maybe trying things that are slightly different, or being a bit bolder and doing more of what you've done before. So I think the answer is whatever you tell us is what we'll come back and ask.
And what I've done, I've got to do the reporting back to the department, Becky. So actually, some of those key evaluation metrics, I might just copy and paste and say, actually, we've got to report back on this. So if it, that makes you cited on what key government metrics are, but it's loose. There's no.
It's actually made me think, Reece, and I can't remember whether I put in the application form to identify specifically which priorities you're looking to meet. But I could very easily update the application form, or at the very least include that in your business plan to help us see which sort of priorities you're focusing on. There's an answer about a business plan template. No, we don't provide a business plan template. As long as it's got the information that we've asked for, we're happy for you to submit it in whatever format you feel as though is appropriate for your group. I think there's a question about the recording. Someone's lost connection. Yes, I think the recording's going out to everybody. Isn't that right, Reece?
Yeah.
And
there's a bit in there, and I think it's linked in with the question around, Connect Somerset. There are a number of system roles, including the Connect Somerset champions who are around how do we share and build bridges and connections between voluntary sector, community stuff that's happening, and us as a health and care and community system and the council system. And so there are a number of roles in there, and I think that the Connect Somerset champions are community rooted people who have been seconded to support those system conversations in their areas. I think we've got a few folk here as well who probably do a much better job than me at describing it. But I also, and I don't know if Phil, you're here as well. There is also and I think Sally's point to this is that I know that there are conversations going on rightly so, without me or anybody else, necessarily Jeff or Sean, where these groups are coming together to discuss and say, "Oh, we're doing this and we're doing that. Wouldn't it be good if our plans potentially aligned in Somerset?" And I don't know, Phil, if you can hear, but yeah, you've got some tentative plans and meetings. I don't know if you want to talk about that at all or not, or if it's not appropriate this time.
Yeah, I just think over a period of time, we've been working with different people who've had a lot of experience in social care over a period of time, building new systems, trying to expand capacity. Certainly what is coming to the fore is prevention of people being moved into the care system too early. So the recognition of unpaid carers is critical, identifiable, and they are large numbers of people. That might be a difficult thing to put into a plan because there's a lot of hidden people out there. So trying to put a business plan together is quite testing if you haven't got a system and you're focusing at that end of social care. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's true to say, yeah, Phil, is a number of you sort of loosely meet. I know Jackie, you've met up with others. I've seen Elizabeth, you've met with here. There's, and I suppose what I wouldn't want is everybody to be in isolation making their plans when they could be like, God, if we only knew what they were doing across the street. that makes a lot more sense, because actually it's about a collaborative approach. We're looking for each area in Somerset to have a successful application. So I don't see there's any competition between areas. Necessarily, so that there is, I think there's real value in that, and I've learned. I was like, oh God, that's a good idea, and then I've told somebody else about what they're doing, and similarly, I've been in conversations last week with people who are doing really interesting stuff. So I'm interested in ways that whether it's we facilitate it, but I also know that there's meetings being organised independently of us to work up plans, which is fantastic.
It's possible that there may be certain groups of people who might have some commonality. They may require, let's say, a different approach to funding rather than a one-off application individually. Does that?
And I didn't. That's right. And I didn't see it because your name is down as Jackie King here. We've got David, who's probably, I'd say, the ringleader of these things. I'll change your name to so I don't know if, and you got your hand up, do you want to elaborate on any of this, David?
Yeah, it's not a bad pseudonym, is it, really? No, I just wanted to let people know that we have started this group just last week where we're trying to get an umbrella, a loose umbrella right across the county of all the projects and towns that are beginning to get involved in this. And if anybody wants to become part of this, they can just send my email and I'll pass it on to the person who's holding the list. But, that may be another route for people to share ideas, because we're all coming from different angles, as you said, and there are people coming out of community centres and the people who are starting up alone. There are people, that are already well established. And we can all share ideas, particularly, and I'm sure over the next couple of weeks, the prime theme of this is going to be about the ARF application, because that's on everybody's mind, and everything else is getting put to one side at the moment, I suspect. So yeah, if you want to be on that group, which we're meeting in the next week or so, maybe the week after.
I think it's the 17th, David, wasn't it? The 17th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
17th. So it's just a Teams or Zoom meeting that people can drop in and out of, ask the question, share the ideas, share the experience.
Yeah.
Is that all right? Speaking on behalf of you, Jackie?
You're back now as David, so that's fine. You're not interloping anymore. Yeah.
All right.
Reese, can I just touch on the point about the business plan? Because I just want to reassure people. I mean, we're not a bank, giving out a business loan. It's for us. It's not about. We're not judging how amazing a business plan is. We just want a format where we can see all the information that we require it. So, and if there are things that are in the business plan that you feel as though you can't fully meet, for instance, well then just explain why, and give some context behind it. So, just don't leave it out and leave it empty. Just put some sort of narrative in there about, the sort of challenges you have, or a reason why you can't put that information in, and then we can have a discussion about it, if that helps.
Fab. Thank you. Okay, guys. I don't know if there's anything else from anybody. I mean, Sean, there's a question in the chat about are there any limits on larger organizations?
There's no exclusions, but we will prioritize groups that have an income of less than 250,000 a year. So it's not an exclusion, but there will be sort of priority order if we have a number of applications. And I think by definition, if things are coming out of the community, it's normally from community groups rather than larger organisations. But obviously, there may be some isolated examples of where that's not the case.
Excellent stuff. Okay, well, I know you are busy people, and I hope that was valuable. I hope that was useful. And so, actions for us is to send out the slides, some evaluation questions that are coming from the department. I think the application form questions, you can now download the full application form. I think that's come out there on the chat, and the collective support offer. So it's saying that actually, if you did want to go to do microproviders, come to me. Here's my details. Here's what we do. We can do shared lives, time banking, connecting with Spark. You've got a menu of supports to go through, and I think it's really positive that a group of you are meeting independently, and I would just maybe encourage you to contact David if you're interested in joining that meeting that is being held, because there might be value in learning from people who have been on the journey for longer, or doing things maybe slightly different. But fab. Okay. I think that was everything. Shout at me if it's not. And we'll look forward to speaking you. Book time in with Sean on the site, and obviously myself and Jeff are around ongoing. If people have got any questions.
Hi, sorry, it's Becky Bird. Very last minute.
No, go on.
I did just very quickly put something in the chat, but I think everyone's dropping out now. We are the Pod. We're a small charity based in Frome. We run 9 projects for people with additional needs, carers and carer support. We would really like to have a conversation